How can engaging in heritage workshops impact on individual and community well-being? Newcastle University has been working with Blythe Tall Ship for 18 months on a project funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund to explore the impact of their heritage workshops on individual and community well-being. Blythe Tall Ship is a community interest company in Blythe, North East England. After building a replica tall ship, the Williams II, to celebrate the anniversary of local adventurer Captain William Smith and his discovery of Antarctica, they began to run educational programs, predominantly with local young people, with the aim of developing their skills and increasing their employment opportunities. They have recently begun a range of heritage workshops called Learn the Ropes, which were aimed at improving well-being and recruited many participants through social prescription. 7 workshops are offered, all based on traditional local skills. These are held in the Shipbuilding Workshop and Historic Harbour Commissioners Building, which creates a connection with the tall ship and the heritage of the local area. The participants are mainly older people, often retired, and most courses attracted a majority of female participants. Though some of the participants were socially prescribed from local wellbeing and healthcare organisations, many were recruited through social media, local advertising, and word of mouth. This became more obvious as the workshops grew in popularity. Our role was to evaluate the impact of the workshops on individual and community well-being, and potentially to develop a toolkit to enable organisations like BTS to capture the impact of their work. We drew on a range of research on individual well-being and brought to the project experience of working in education and with social enterprises and volunteers within heritage and cultural organisations. We used a variety of data collection tools in a mixed methods approach, trialling these in an observation phase before using them more explicitly in a research phase. So what is well-being? We drew on a number of definitions and theories, taking into account the demographics of the participants, the nature of the workshops they were attending, and the element of social prescription versus self-selected attendance. At the core, we based our research on Falk's concept of life balance, as we were conscious that participants would not achieve well-being purely through attendance of these workshops, but that other external factors would influence this balance. The concept of community well-being is quite nebulous and harder to pin down. We used Crow and Marr's overlapping themes to explore the connections that are fostered through heritage-based workshops and how these experiences encourage participants to make new connections or join new networks. This led us to the notion that the workshops foster forms of social capital. Tools used included observations of participants, self-completed questionnaires, interviews with participants, facilitators, and key external stakeholders, and participatory visual methods to elicit discussion. The Warwick-Edinburgh Mental Wellbeing Scale is a self-report questionnaire with data gathered at 3 points in the course: the initial session, a midpoint session, and the final session. Participants are asked to consider 14 statements and rate their well-being on a 5-point scale. A score lower than 40 can indicate depression. In phase 2 of the project, the exploratory phase, 7 courses were included in the dataset. 4 out of these 7 courses showed notable increases in well-being scores across their participants, and the other courses had individual increases. There were some decreases in individual well-being scores, but accompanying interview data told us this was often because of unrelated personal events, such as bereavement or ill health, demonstrating that the questionnaire was better used when triangulated with other data collection tools. The observation tool proved more problematic. As researchers, we found some workshops allowed for more conversation and social interaction than others, and some required higher focus and skill levels than others. Though we obtained some usable data from the observations done, it needed to be combined with the other methods to draw conclusions and make comparisons between participants and between workshops. The research team spent time with the participants in each course to build up relationships with them. This was beneficial when conducting interviews, as some participants felt able to relate difficult or sensitive narratives. However, the data from the interviews consistently showed the positive impact of the workshops on individual well-being, particularly in how the participants felt they had become a part of a community and the impact of engaging in the workshops had on their motivation and sense of purpose. We incorporated visual methods to capture a different sort of data, in this case, their perceptions and beliefs about community and what it means. We did not give participants a definition of community, but developed statements based on the Sligo Public Participation Network as part of their vision for community well-being. Participants were asked to rank the statements in order of significance and talk through their decisions afterwards. The most significant statement overall was that participants felt all community members should feel valued, nurtured, and respected. Protecting local heritage and local environment was rated much lower. This rating often came with a caveat that other statements were more important, but that this did not lessen the importance of environment and heritage. There were comments about needing to get the foundations right before we could move on to improving or developing other aspects. Interestingly, the lowest ranked statement was about having a strong sense of local identity. But this might have been partially due to the fact that many participants came from outside Blythe itself. It did suggest that their notion of community was more centred around being a part of BTS rather than the town or local neighbourhood. Participants were asked what social activities they did regularly. Different groups had different social networks, but there were crossovers between groups. Sometimes development was seen in these social networks through participants moving onto a second or even a third BTS Learn the Ropes course. Some social activities were extremely popular across all courses, such as Pilates, meeting friends, and singing in choirs. Individual well-being was strongly impacted. Participant confidence was increased by learning a new skill. Other positive impacts included increased social connections. Many participants were retired or felt isolated in some way, perhaps through having caring responsibilities, a recent bereavement, or a period of ill health. Making new friends helped their individual well-being, and attending the workshop gave them purpose and structure to their week. The nurturing, informal atmosphere in the workshops contributed to this. In the woodwork and knitting workshops, for example, participants commented on the support from both the facilitators and from the other members of the group. Community well-being is still more difficult to pin down, but greater engagement in the wider community as a result of being involved in the workshops was clear. Social capital was increased through greater engagement with community members, organisations and events. Many Shanties Group members now sing with the wider BTS Sea Shanty Singers Group. There was also evidence of greater awareness of the wider community and potential opportunities, with participants joining other community groups as a result of their involvement with BTS. Finally, there was a clear sense of being a member of a community. Participants talked about becoming part of the BTS community or family. We drew several conclusions in an attempt to answer our question of how can engaging in heritage workshops impact on individual and community well-being. Improved individual well-being was demonstrated through increased self-confidence, social interaction, and skills development. Social capital was increased through broadening and expansion of social networks, and participants felt that they became part of a community by representing BTS, gaining an awareness of the wider community impact of the organisation. As the workshops grew in popularity, Blythe Tourship became a more prominent, well-known aspect of Blythe as a wider community, forming a reputation and an identity, representing Blythe and the local heritage outside the town and drawing people in from wider Northumberland. It is still challenging to identify broader impact on well-being of wider community, and this needs to be examined further. There are still further questions and challenges for BTS to address if these workshops continue to grow and develop. One of these is how participants can sustain what they have learned and the benefits they report of engaging in the courses. Another key question to be considered further is if a 12-week course is necessary, or if the benefits could be seen when engaging for a shorter duration, if there is opportunity for further long-term involvement in the organisation. These will be explored further in the next stage of the course development.